Hey guys, just to let you know that Borderlands and The Last Ones are on Tubi right now. That's Tubi. It's a streaming service. You probably have it on your PlayStation or on your phone. Check it out. The Last Ones is a zombie drama. It's in black and white. The first black and white zombie movie, I think it is. I'm not going to check though, you know. And also, Borderland is a mexploitation film about the cartels, and it's a lot of fun. And if you're like, hey, I want to learn about how El Paso is, well, don't watch my film because it's not like how it is at all. But if you want to watch a fun movie set in El Paso, check it out. It's a lot of fun. Borderland and The Last Ones on Tubi. Check them out now. And now, let's start with the show. Hello, and welcome to the Bomb Squad. You know what we're talking about today. It's Texas Chainsaw Millennium, because we're never going to stop talking about these movies. We're going to keep making them, and hopefully one of them is going to be made by me and Derek. So yeah, we cover every Texas Chainsaw movie, so of course we're here. We're talking 2022's Texas, and because we are talking Texas, we brought our Texas expert, Derek Sykes. Derek, how are you?
I'm excited to be here.
Yes, a very new film. Before we get into any of the discussion, let me just break down. Here's a funny thing. So this movie was directed by, well, it was originally directed by Andy Tohill. It was supposed to be directed by Andy Tohill and his brother Ryan, and they split after the first week, and so they were replaced by David Blue Garcia, who is a Hispanic, I think he's Mexican, director. But the funny thing is that me and him were both, he brought his movie called Tejano. I brought Borderland. We both played at the El Paso Film Festival, and we're both doing great. And so I think it's funny that I have that personal connection to him. He was a cool guy. He has long hair. It's all I said hi to him, and that's about it. But this was made it wasn't made this year. It was made, I think, in 2020. It just got released on Netflix, and it stars Sarah Yarkin, Elsie Fisher, and then Mark Burnham as Leatherface. There's other people, but those are the main ones. Josh, tell us what this movie. Oh my God, Elsie Fisher is the girl from 8th grade. I was like, this girl looks super familiar.
Oh, you didn't realize that till now? Yeah.
No, I did not. Because she has different hair. Anyway, Josh, what is this movie about? How can she have different hair in one movie?
You're like the person in the DC universe fooled by Clark Kent putting on glasses. Yeah. You're like, he's a different guy.
Like, Superman doesn't have glasses, dude. I don't know what you're thinking. Josh, what's this movie about?
This is about woke millennials trying to gentrify a small Texas town and getting their just desserts for it.
Getting their just desserts. Yes. Also, this movie it takes place in a universe where Mexicans have never existed in Texas. But what are your thoughts? Derek, we'll start with you.
So I'll just say this. For the first 19 or so minutes, I was like, what are we doing here? And then the first kill happened. And I realized what we were doing here. And I actually got fully on board. And so with just that one arm break, I really turned around and actually I gave this movie 4 stars on Letterboxd. So I really liked it. It is actually exactly in the middle of my redone series ranking now, behind Leatherface, but ahead of Texas Chainsaw 3D. And you know, I said I wasn't really drawn in by the characters, but the more I thought about it and the more that the discourse happened over the 24 hours since its release, I actually think what this movie is doing is kind of clever. And we don't need to get into theme and everything right now, but just know that I think this movie is a little bit smarter than I initially gave it credit for. And I do have to credit someone for pointing me in that direction, but I'll say that later.
That isn't. I actually did spend a lot of this movie being like, is this deliberately a farce or is this unintentional? So that was I could see what you mean. I haven't followed any of the discourse though, so I don't really know what like everyone's talking about it yet. I just went in blind. So
Yeah. What did you think, Joshua?
oh,
You died, eh?
I okay. This is interesting to me. This reminded me in some ways of Jurassic Park: The Lost World, the second Jurassic Park film.
And that it's
Um,
awesome.
in that, whenever they ask Steven Spielberg, like, because I watched one of those like Spielberg on Spielberg things where he just like kind of gives a commentary on like why he chose to make certain movies and whatnot. And when they got to The Lost World, he's like, "Well, I really wanted to do the T-Rex rampaging in San Diego." He's like, "That was like," and he's like, "The rest of the movie, whatever, but that was like what I wanted to have happen in my mind." And in this movie, the the streaming millennial party bus kill scene is like that. For that's like, okay, they really wanted this scene, and then they're like, how do they get here? So I kind of I respect that it was like clearly that was like the idea they started the movie with, and then they're like, well, let's just build around that and like figure it out later, you know? So I don't know. It's very uneven though. It's a very uneven movie to me. So
See, and I'll kind of agree that it is uneven, but I'll also agree that I loved it.
oh really?
Yeah, I think. Well, see, here's the thing. First of all, and a lot of this, and I apologize just because I was super active on Twitter yesterday. But a lot of this might be me defending the movie from Twitter.com. But I think, like, so many times we talk about the fact that they don't make it in modern times, and it's harder to have like a commentary on modern times in the past. And so this kind of is what everything I wanted out of a Texas Chainsaw movie, except it doesn't have Chop Top. But it is like, yeah, I agree with Derek, and we'll talk about it more. And this is just initial thoughts, but I do think it is way smarter than people are giving it credit for. And I think it is kind of that thing that we watched Dead Presidents last week, and we kind of talked about how people don't really want to deal with some of the themes that Dead Presidents brings up. And I think that kind of happens here, and especially because so many people were expecting a like just a slaughter fest, and it like the thing that it's trying to tell you is a little bit depressing. And so I think that they're trying to shut it out by saying like, oh, it's dumb. And it's like, well, no, if you watch it, it's not that dumb. I mean, it does have some misgivings, but I think overall it is trying for something, and I'll always appreciate that. But before, like, let me just set it up a little bit more. So yeah, it starts off, and it's these like investors, and they're popular on Instagram and TikTok and stuff. And they're a chef and a cook, and they've decided to like come to this abandoned town, Harlow, Texas. And they've kind of like bought the whole town, and their goal is to like sell it to other rich millennials who kind of want like a place to get away from everyone, because they're all like, I assume they're all famous, but maybe they just want to get away. Maybe they all have
They
big
kind of allude to just them being like at least kind of I don't know. It's like they're all rich but very young, so I assume they're all kind of like TikTok stars or something like that.
Yeah, and so they get there and they find out that there's one house that may or may not have been sold in the buy rush, and it's the old orphanage, and it belongs to a woman, and she has a is it her she mentions it as her, does she say it's her son, or are we just someone, the sheriff says that's her boy, but we don't
I
know.
think that she only ever refers to him as one of her boys.
Yeah, so I think it's that Leatherface kind of found himself there, and then she's been taking care of him for so long, and so she's kind of disappeared. And we also find out that Sally from the original is
Oh, see, this is the part that I was like,
well,
okay, this you didn't need to do this.
Sally from the original. Josh, we're gonna disagree, but we'll get there. She has been hunting Leatherface, a
She's a
la
Texas
Carrie
Ranger.
Fisher. Yeah, yeah, just like Carrie Fisher, Jamie Lee Curtis in Halloween. Carrie Fisher always did hunt people, but she killed them because she was Princess Leia. And so she's been hunting him, but they've never been able to find him because he had a mask on. And I'm gonna go out of my way and assume that Leatherface didn't try to get a driver's license or any kind of information. And so they run afoul of the mom and of Leatherface, and that's when things kick off. So we can go from there. And I think one of the things that I saw that they hated about it on, like, even before the movie came out, and I might have admit that I jumped in on this, but the like hating of the millennials, and like they like at one point someone tells Leatherface is going to be canceled. I mean, is it that different than the original guys doing astrology, and like when Franklin gets his arm cut, and then that one girl goes, "Oh, or this astrology thing says that's a bad sign." It's like, no shit.
Yeah, no, and I do get that. Although they do like because at the very beginning the millennials are at like a gas station, and then a guy just rolls up in like a pretty normal truck, and they're like, "You need to have the world's smallest dick to drive a truck like that," you know. And it's like, look, he has a gun. He's not a real. And it's just very like, oh, this is such a like. They're such millennials, you know.
Yeah, I see what you're saying, Andrew. I do think this movie, however, portrays its characters a little worse than the original.
Oh yeah, of course.
Portrayed like the naive innocence of the characters in the original, as opposed to
Like
I don't know.
Yeah, no,
cynical
I think that's a good
online.
point.
Yeah.
Everyone
It's
here.
And I think that might be the biggest difference is that in the original, they're kind of shown, like they use that to show their naivete. And in this one, they're kind of supposed to be on the right side of the theology argument, and they kind of are, but they do come off as unbearable a lot of the times.
Which is kind of the point, and
Right.
what
Yeah,
I meant.
that was my assumption too. Yeah, that
Like,
it's intentional.
I mean, I'm just gonna say it. I think Melody is the most annoying
Oh my god, she's so
character
bad.
in the entire series. I hated her.
Yeah.
I hated Melody so much. Flames on the side of my face. Like,
Yeah. There was like no point where I was like, oh, okay, I kind of see where she's going. It's like your whole role is to just be super annoying. Like, yeah, and it's yeah. Okay, so the main characters are Melody and Lila. Is that how you say her name?
it's Lila, yes.
And they're sisters, and they've kind of like Melody's part of oh man, I hate having to say chef, the chef duo that's bought the town, and Lila is just her sister who's come along. And Lila is the survivor of the school shooting, um, and so like they're like super like anti-gun and everything. And yeah, Melody is so annoying. Like, at no point do I ever sympathize with her until there's chainsaws involved, which it's hard to not sympathize with someone in that situation. Um, what did you guys think of the? Because again, I feel like people who are saying the characters are unlikable are kind of talking about Melody and a little bit of Lila. If I'm being honest, she is kind of
And
annoying.
the guy is a little bit like that too.
Yeah. Dante.
Dante. Yeah.
See, but I didn't mind. Like, well, first I really liked Catherine, who plays. She's the one who shows up and she ends up in the bus.
Oh yeah, from the bank.
Yeah, and I really liked Ruth, which was Dante's fiance.
Yeah, Ruth seemed like a nice, normal girl. I mean,
Yeah,
she's like an artist or runs an art gallery or something of that
yeah,
nature.
she was, and like they could have easily made her and the realist, like the bank lady, super annoying and super like just like, oh, I don't want to leave, I want to stay. But they made them both like very just normal people, and I think like especially in horror films, it's kind of harder to have normal characters because you want to know a lot of times whether you should root for or against these people, and when they're normal you just kind of don't want them to die, which makes for more interesting fodder as the story goes along.
Yeah, I do sympathize with Dante, especially with what happens to him later.
Oh
But
my god, yeah.
it is like that's probably the most like disturbing part of the movie. One thing I wanted to ask, and maybe I missed it. Surely Derek would have picked this up because he's seen the movie twice now.
Mhm.
At the beginning, they're like, "Oh yeah, my family has roots here from back when they, like my grandmother like lived here, or our great grandmother, something like that." And I was like, "Oh man, is this going to be like the Daddario one where like they're secretly like Leatherface's cousins or something, and they don't really bring it up again unless I completely like missed it.
No,
Um,
they don't. I also because Harlow isn't the town
Yeah, I was gonna
from the
say.
first movie.
right, but I also didn't know if they were just retconning that because they always kind of retcon stuff when they do this. So
Yeah, I think they probably she had a grandmother from Harlow, and that's about all we learn about why they even know about Harlow.
Yeah.
okay.
But the town from the first one is Newt, Texas, which is the one that they go back to in 3D and Leatherface. Um, but presumably Newt still exists because of the end credits scene.
Right. And I kind of feel like, yeah, I kind of agree that either way, Harlow is kind of where Leatherface has set up because they do establish that Sarah or Sally has been searching for Leatherface. So you'd assume that he's kind of, I mean, he can't get all the way away, but he's kind of moved out of the town because they know him, you know?
That is very funny that Sally, as the ranger, has been searching for him for like 40 years. Never,
Yeah.
never
Yeah.
like,
Well,
it's-
okay. So what did you guys think of Richter, the cowboy guy?
I actually, that was kind of an inversion because I thought he would be in on it because they usually have that guy in the other movies be like secretly part of the family, and instead he's just a good guy. And I was like, oh, that's kind of an interesting twist.
Yeah, I mean that's literally what I just said. He was just normal. I kind of this is something actually not that has nothing to do with the movie as is. Um, I think it would have been fun if they'd cast an older actress as Lila, so they could have had that. So they could have had Lila fuck Richter. Because as soon as she like the implication of that and that Melody was more annoyed than anything, I was like, oh, I wish they did. That would have been
Yeah.
just to make Melody more annoyed. I was
Make
like,
it
I wish
even
that,
sadder.
You just want that character to be slightly more pissed, essentially.
yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, um, I do like. Also, I have a real problem with this in real life too. But when you don't know somebody and you just start talking shit about them, and you know they can hear you, I think it's like honestly one of the worst qualities
Yeah.
ever.
That's a
But
very
Yeah.
I
passive
also want to
aggressive,
say
yeah.
I enjoy it when people have the balls to talk shit to people they do know. You know,
Right.
like acquaintances or someone you went to high school with, and if you're just like, you're a bitch or you're a terrible person, I hate you. I think that's ballsy. I think it's annoying when you do it to complete strangers. And of course, because she's the worst, that's what Melody did to Richter. And then of course she gets her comeuppance when he's their contractor. Ooh, it felt so good when that reveal came.
Yeah, yeah, I do. Yeah, that for because in the very first scene, yeah, when she's talking shit about him, it is kind of like, what are you doing? Like, what's the end goal for you, Melody? And he kind of takes it in stride. Like, I mean, he says something, but it is kind of like she's saying it so loud that he can hear, and he's at the gas pump, so it's not even like he's like eavesdropping. It's like you could literally hear it if you're like at your car. And so, yeah, I did like the reveal that he's actually the guy. And then yeah, I was excited that he wasn't part of the family. I am disappointed that there wasn't a family, but I guess if you're trying to like kind of retell the story, it's hard to
That
it's
is
hard
true,
to give
yeah,
up
and
the
that
family.
almost was my biggest like. I'm like, oh, because the family like that's like usually the most unsettling part of like the first two movies is the fact that like the whole family's in on it, and the fact that he's just kind of on his own was like very much, I don't know, that and like Sally still hunting him felt the most like, let's just try to like lift this from Halloween a little bit to me. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Yeah,
Although I will say, if their whole conceit is that Sally's hunting him and she can't find him, um, not being with the family feels like a good enough reason that she couldn't find him. I mean, other than
yeah,
very
yeah.
obvious, like he was wearing a mask thing that they point out. Um,
But
But
it's
like,
also he's also a giant mute, so like, 'cause it's like I feel like he'd stand
yeah,
out
but
even with the
if his
best. But
violent, all I mean is that if his violent tendencies have been kind of quelled by staying, with this woman, and we don't know how long he's been there, but presumably not too long after the original movie, it seems like he really does consider her family. I mean, um,
yeah, you think like you almost get the sense she was hiding him, like she was like wanting to protect him a bit, is what I
I
got from
think
it.
that's exactly. Well, I think she was hiding him, but I think she was protecting everyone else
Yeah.
from him. The only reason I say that is because how concerned she gets when he shows up at the top of the stairs.
Right, right. Yeah, and her
And
concern
like,
seems to be more of getting him to go back to his room as opposed to like getting him to attack the two people
That's
that are
fair,
coming.
yeah. Yeah, I could see that.
which is literally the first time that we've ever seen
Yeah.
anyone in a family try and manage Leatherface's emotions.
Yeah, and you
See,
can
they
kind of
kind of
tell.
half-ass that in the Daddario one. They're like, he's a good man and a protector. Just leave him in the basement, but they don't really commit. So, yeah.
Yeah, I do feel like this one does a better job of it because you kind of see. I think like having you meet the older lady before she passes away because she passes away in the ambulance after she has a heart attack. And seeing her before and seeing how she reacts to Leatherface, I think that did wonders for to go into believing that she could kind of keep him at bay. And it does make sense, especially if I mean we didn't get to see the family, but if he's still like there's still that presence of family in her, and so it would also make sense that as soon as she passes, he gets back to Leatherfacing.
Right. It's like he still doesn't really know how to express emotion
Right.
in a healthy way. So all he can do is express his rage, at what is a genuinely unfair thing happening to him. Um, by brutally killing everyone he comes into contact with.
Right. Right. And yeah, and I think one of my favorite scenes in the movie is the scene. So they're coming back, they're trying to get to the hospital and she passes and then he like attacks the deputies and the sheriff in the car and also Ruth is in the car and they crash and so he that's where he like he takes her face, the old woman's been taking care of him. And
Oh,
that's
Mrs. Mick is her name, by the way.
yes, yes, yes. And he and that's the face he uses. And he even puts her in like he kind of decorates her and puts her in the cornfields as like the tributes that he used to make. And
Yeah, it,
again,
it,
we
it
haven't
looked
seen
like
that.
the shot of the corpse from the opening of the first movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
is,
And I
yeah.
really like that because it kind of makes it feel like it kind of adds the lore that they really do that to people that they really like as opposed to everyone and everyone else they just kind of eat. And I like that idea of him like he immediately like it's not so much that he goes back to his old habits, it's just like without her there, he only knows the one way to survive and to live, and it's the Leatherface way. And I thought that like that added so much to the movie that I thought that like I was like this is great. And also the tension in that scene was just really good with Ruth. Ruth is awake and she's like trying not to get his attention, but also he's cutting off someone's face. So it's hard to be quiet in that situation. And then the like sheriff comes back to life and stuff. And so I thought that scene was super well done.
I also like when we cut to the gas station, and you hear her like whispers coming through the other side, but like there's no one there because the guy's outside. And then when he finally comes inside, he just hears this like voice, saying he's wearing her face. He's
Right.
wearing her face. Um, of all the impeti, to get Sally back in the movie, if we've already known she's a ranger, so that felt like she didn't just have the magical sense that he had
Like
come back.
stumble
Like,
on it. Yeah.
yeah, at least like like someone did have to contact her to get out
Right,
there.
right. And yeah, and I think that was good because they used a guy who owns the store and he's the one who kind of like he gives an exposition dump at the beginning of like, oh yeah, Sally was looking for her and he never found her because she was wearing a mask. But then the fact that it comes back and that's who he calls her to like get her attention, it's like, oh, so now it's no longer an exhibition. It's not a like. It's so that he knows what her goal is. So of course, he would call her because I mean, she's looking for a guy who wears people's faces as his face. So that's the first person I'm calling as well.
It's a
And I
savvy
thought
move.
that was smart. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, versus him just never being in the movie again. And yeah, no, I agree.
Yeah, exactly. Because they could have just like had her listen to the radio, but the fact that they kind of tied it back into the shopkeeper, it's like, oh, you guys actually really thought this out about how the world would work in this Texas state.
And it does, because apparently only 4 people live in Harlow.
Right.
5, I guess, because you have Mrs. Mick, Leatherface, Richter, the 2 cops. Okay, 6, and the gas station guy. That's so on brand for a Texas Chainsaw Massacre version of Texas, for literally 33% of the population to be cops.
Right.
And bad cops. I mean, well, bad cops. What's the difference? But
I will say, like, now that I'm thinking about it,
yeah, I get what you mean. Though they're incompetent. Like,
yeah, because they don't like. We find out later too, because they actually help get the old woman out. But you find out later that she didn't sell; she still like had the rights, and they just took like the Millennials' word for it.
Right. Which again is it's something that
oh,
happens.
Speaking of, I do want to hit on the movie's most controversial scene, which is that scene when she gets kicked out. I keep losing the thread I'm looking for. I'll find. I just want to remember who to credit.
There is actually, I don't know. So think about that. Like, it's very like, because gentrifiers like pushing out like all the residents is already evil, and it's almost like they take it one step further by also making them like do it illegally. In this case, it's like it's evil even when it's done legally. It's like, but in this case, they were completely in the wrong. Like, not even the law was actually on their side. I thought that was actually kind of like a funny idea, darkly funny, but
yeah. But I mean, that's kind of in line with the original too.
Yeah.
All these, the humor being fucked up.
Yeah. And I think like it is funny, and again, like I think that whoever wrote it tried to use this as an excuse to make Melody more likable, but it ends up doing the opposite, where she's like, "Oh well, I need to find the deed to make sure we did it legally." It's like, what difference does it make at this point? She's dead. Like, you guys killed her. They didn't really kill her, but she is dead because because of circumstances around them. And so like finding the deed at this point, it's like, who gives a shit?
Okay, so I found it. It was Richard Newby on Twitter, by the way, who did this thread, because he was complaining, and I had also found this annoying. So a couple white people got on Twitter to talk about the scene where Dante asks for the Confederate flag to be taken down. And, as white people are wont to do, they kind of go the virtue signal-y route with it and make it seem like the movie has an agenda to make Dante, as a black man, look like the bad guy for asking this flag to be taken down. And I don't actually think that holds up.
Yeah,
in terms of the if you think about it, but if you think about it in terms of the context of the series, Richard points out that the point of it, much like, and I am direct quoting his Twitter here, the point of it, much like the original, is these idealists have come across something they think they understand, but it's so much worse, and no political idealism can save them from that. Essentially saying, like, he thinks that he can come to, like, this ghost town in deep state Texas, fix it with a coat of paint, erase all the bad parts, of the history and make it this haven for, young, successful, annoying older Gen Z young millennials. And what he actually is doing is just like poking a hornet's nest. And, this cycle of American violence against poor people and disadvantaged people of all backgrounds consumes everyone, I think is essentially what he's trying to say, across the political spectrum. It's what pushed the family into cannibalism. You know, it ultimately is what leads both the hippies in the original and the influencers in this movie down in the into the path of, the cannibals or quasi cannibals in this movie. We're not sure. They don't really touch on it.
Yeah, he doesn't have time to eat people. He's too busy. Yeah, and I think like it's weird because they even go out of their way to make you like aware that Miss McLeatherface is she has it there for a different reason and not because of the Confederacy, which is like it's still like a little bit clunky because it's like, well, you know what it stands for, right? But they do kind of like they're like, oh, this is just their like they try to pull like the this is their heritage, but I didn't ever think that Dante was in the wrong. Even then, Dante didn't even want like his main focus was that the investors coming in would hate it more than him specifically doing it for a cause because they kind of show him as like he's just trying to sell this place. He doesn't really care like how good it is.
He does.
He's like a salesman.
I know a lot of guys like Dante who are very business minded, who will sometimes put business interests in front of their own safety and their own interests.
Right.
Um, so it all felt very real to me. And I don't think the movie ever it tries to position him as the bad guy. I
Right.
think, I
That
think again the movie's lesson is he's not like he's doing the right thing. It's just that this is not a situation in like that doing the morally right thing
right.
save you.
And I think like the only thing that I would say like oh
It's just
okay
my take.
is when Richter gives him the flag and like goes here's your flag, but I kind of saw that less as like Richter being like oh you're bad for wanting the flag down and me more being like was this worth it like what you guys have been doing
Yeah,
and because
exactly.
he does it in
Exactly.
anger after they've taken her to the hospital and I do feel like it is kind of funny like looking at that tweet is that they're kind of mad like they're doing the thing where like yeah they're mad for people of color or in this specific case they're mad for black people but like they're not asking they're just assuming what they would feel like
And as Richard points out, all that these takes do is just further push black characters into being props for white
right
arguments. Yeah, I don't know. It felt real. I think anyone in my family would ask someone to take a Confederate flag down. It's an instinct. It's a thing. It's very painful for a lot of people in this country, and so that felt real. And then her kind of trying to justify it also felt very real.
right
And then, the fact of the matter is, her heart attack had nothing to do with the flag.
right
It was about Leatherface.
Being evicted and yeah, knowing that Leatherface, yeah.
I think it was mostly about being found out. About Leatherface, not having the care he needs, or in any case, it was about, I think her heart attack was about the
give
little
me one
chainsaw cannibal secret she was hiding.
I also think, like, I mean, obviously, not to go fully political. Um, I think generally it's not like because it's kind of like they want to do this big like food cart thing, and they almost position it like, oh, he's like a chef, she's a cook, they're coming and buying it. I was always kind of under the impression usually it's like capital, like the big like financial companies move in and start gentrifying, and then it's like these places like buy it out from them. In this case, they almost made these two characters like both the capital and the food truck guys, so it's like they kind of combine them to represent like everything bad about gentrification, but it's like, but then also they're the minority. So I don't know. It's a little muddled. So um, it's hard to see exactly like what the intent was. You know what I mean?
And I think that simplification maybe for several reasons. Um, and I'm not saying that makes it work at all because, like I said, the first 19 minutes of the movie kind of failed to capture me when we were just having to deal with these characters. But this movie is, 81 minutes with credits?
Right.
That is a point in its favor. I love a movie that's 90 minutes or less.
Well,
Yes.
yeah, and I think
So-
when you're dealing with an 80-minute movie, you kind of have to.
Yeah, obviously they shouldn't have had like scenes of like the land rights being negotiated. It's like obviously they didn't need to do that. So it's like it works well enough, but it's like trying to have like these people on Twitter being like, here's what it means. It's like I think you're just seeing like what you want to see.
Catherine, or is it Caitlin or Catherine?
Say that again?
The wouldn't she be the capital because she's from the bank?
Well, it's
Yeah,
kind of
she's
like these like TikTok stars or whatever like bought all the properties but are auctioning them to the I don't know. It's kind of a weird setup, and it's really, to me, it just felt like an excuse to be like, all right, how do we get all these like 20 somethings like there?
And I would say that is actually the Bus Massacre is an all-timer, I think, in terms of this franchise. And
I agree.
Yet, there are too many people in this movie.
Yeah, I did love the Bus Massacre.
See, but I like the idea that they're so self-absorbed that they've just been in this bus on their phones. They have no idea that like all these murders are happening like 100 feet away.
And that is good. I do wish though that like I don't know, most of them had left. Maybe there were 2 buses and most of them left earlier.
Yeah.
And we only have to do with the main characters in this last half. Even though again the Bus Massacre is great. It just also felt like, I don't know, there's so many people here. It's like we have to get through them all.
Yeah, there was like a scene where they cut to the Bus Massacre and then they cut back to it, and I was like, "Oh man, there's still people to be killed."
you could have had the number of people. I don't disagree with that. Yeah, there could have been less.
Also, Caitlin her own death shot because she's a named character. So it just goes like, yeah, she's a main character, but she had like 3 lines.
Yeah, well, and it's weird. You know what? Because they have so Leatherface gets into the bus. And then they have a couple of shots where they keep cutting to Catherine and she's like getting pushed against the window. And I thought that they were going to kind of do the thing where like there's so many people and they're all trying to move that they're just kind of crushing each other.
Yeah.
But then they don't do that. And I was like, oh, so what was the point of having so many people in the bus if you weren't even going to do the obvious?
I kind of wish she had escaped the bus.
Yeah.
I mean, her death was fine. Okay, it is Catherine.
Yeah.
But I think I would have liked another person in that final chase scene.
Yeah, I did. Well, and I liked Catherine's death. I thought it was cool, but I also like that Leatherface's chainsaw is like a katana where it cuts real quick. But yeah, I would.
Yeah, because he sliced her in half real quick.
He slices a bunch of people in half real quick.
He lightsabers quite a few of them.
They're in the bus, and Layla falls on the ground. And like he's about to chainsaw her, and then someone else gets in the way, and he cuts like a clear line against his chest, like through him. And I was like, man, that chainsaw is
and they do that too with Dante and the butcher knife. It just rips through him like ridiculously.
I thought it was a cleaver.
Yeah, it's a big cleaver.
Isn't that the same thing? Oh, I guess a cleaver's different. Whatever. I don't know.
I think a cleaver is supposed to have more power behind it when you swing it.
Yeah, it's like a square, where a butcher knife is just like for cutting off fat.
Oh, it's just like a really big knife. Yeah.
But yeah, and I like that too because then Dante's kind of wandering around. That's how they find out.
Oh, that's so great. That's like the creepiest part. Yeah.
And he like pulls it, and I thought that he was gonna be cut like Because up until that point, they had a couple of people get their throats cut, and they do that like I'm holding the blood in. So that's what I thought his thing was gonna be. But no, half of his
No,
face
just the
is.
left side of his mouth destroyed.
Oh yeah, I
And you
was like,
can kind of
oh.
see his tongue sometimes. I was like, this is hardcore.
That was the
Like,
like, I wish he had died, like, so he didn't have to suffer
yeah,
through that, you
this
know?
is a lot of pain for Dante. Who really didn't do anything wrong.
It
Right.
was tough.
Yeah.
Also, just one kind of part of the Bus Massacre I thought was fun was when he chainsaws a guy, keeps him on the saw, and then also chainsaws a girl.
Oh
Like
Oh
it's,
yeah,
yeah,
he like
into each
pushes
other.
him into her.
it's
Yeah.
almost like fucking her to death with the
Yeah.
chainsaw.
Yeah.
It's
Telling you.
very Friday the 13th Part 2. Um, the Spirit of the Bad in that movie
Right.
reminded me of that, even though these characters were extras, and so, we had no
And
way of
I,
knowing who they were to each other. But
as far as the violence goes, I do kind of feel like because that also feels a little bit like Texas 2, where he kind of uses the chainsaw as his dick a few times, but
yeah.
he never actually kills someone like that because so it's kind of like, oh, well, let's show him actually kill someone in that kind of way. And I feel like they did that a bunch of times, where like he's like lifting people up with the chainsaw and like cutting them in half, and I felt like,
Like Sally.
yeah, oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And so it was interesting. So yeah, as Eric said, so Sally comes and she here. I like this movie a lot. I will say I'm not a huge fan of the way Sally was portrayed. As soon as she gets to the town, I was like, "What the hell is this?" A couple of times. So she gets there and she's like, she has a gun on him and she has a shotgun, and she like tells him all the like Franklin's names and all the people that he killed when she met him the first time, and she like wants him to say her name or acknowledge that he knows her, and he's like, I don't know you. Well, he doesn't say anything, but he doesn't say anything, and so she gets mad, and then he just kind of walks away. I gotta say that was my least favorite scene in the whole movie. It didn't make sense. Like, why would you want him? You don't even know if he can talk.
Yeah. I was gonna like, she of all people should know he's like some weird mute like invalid. You know
Yeah,
that was a
who's
very
very
that seemed like
fast,
a very
and
like, how good was
they
this in Halloween? Let's do it again. You know.
yeah, it seemed like,
So
oh, we need them to meet, but we can't. Obviously, she can't kill him here, and he can't kill her. So we just have to find a way for him to like. It didn't make like to me. I was like, would she really want his name? Like, I thought she just wanted to kill him.
Yeah, I think I also don't love the way Sally was used here. Full disclosure. But I do like the fact that he didn't recognize her.
Yeah, I like that too.
At least that felt mean and nice.
Yeah, because really, like, why would he recognize her?
Truly, he met her one day in the 70s,
Yeah,
and he's like,
and she looked
that's his
completely
job.
different. Yeah,
That's his job. You meet someone one time at your job, you're not going to remember them for the rest of your life. Like,
yeah. That is a funny scene. So then like yeah, so he walks away and then he does the bus massacring, and then she comes back and she like fights him, and then he chainsaws her up. And I do think like I didn't like the way Sally was portrayed, but I did like the reversal of being like, oh now, or like this is the first time we've really seen one of these legacy characters be violently murdered, and I enjoyed that.
well, the second time this year, but yes.
Yeah. So and I guess it kind of makes sense because it's not even the same character. I mean, it's not the same actor because she passed away. Chambers passed away, right?
yeah, a few years ago. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Marilyn Burns passed away in
What I was calling it
shortly
Chambers.
after Texas Chainsaw 3D came out, actually, or before.
Right. Right. Yeah, and I think we even talked about that in our big podcast.
Yeah, her
But
and Toby Hooper,
yeah,
right around the same time.
See, and yeah, it's like, I will say I didn't like the story inclusion because her part in it is so incidental. But I do almost feel like if you're essentially doing it as like a commentary on, like, you're negating the past entirely, I
yeah,
appreciate that. You know.
and then because like she knows that Leatherface wants Melody and Lila, and so she like locks her in their car, and even then I was like, why? You know he's gonna come out here anyway looking for him, even if they're not technically here. He's still gonna look for him. And so like that part didn't make sense to me either. Why she wanted to make sure that they stayed there. Like if anything, like use them as a trap because she keeps them in the truck and then she leaves to go find them. So it's like, so why are they still in the truck? Like, what's
Well,
the point?
and that's true because first she's like, "Get out of here," and then
Yeah,
they don't. She dies, and then as she's dying, she's like, "If you leave now, you're gonna like it'll haunt you forever," which is like very mixed, just like message considering.
Well, I think it's because Sally assumed she'd just be able to kill him, so she wanted the girls to leave. They
right.
didn't leave. Now the responsibility in quotes, responsibility falls on them. It did haunt her. At least this portrayal of Sally clearly has haunted her. As as we assumed it would at the end of the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre. So actually, the everything after she gets chainsawed in her inclusion works for me.
Yeah.
It's just like everything leading up to that is kind of like, did Sally really need to be in this movie?
Yeah, I
have
think
they ever
that's the
actually
thing.
done have they done a movie where the survivors are in a sequel and their life is just totally fine? They're not like super PTSD. I wonder.
I still know what you
I,
did last summer. She seems pretty okay with
I
that.
still don't get it.
She had terror dreams.
Oh, that's right. I mean, everyone has nightmares.
She,
She can't even have nightmares.
I want one of them to just be going to their job and like whistling a happy tune like
I think Scream 5 was Sydney.
oh, I haven't seen it yet, so
Okay, well,
Yeah.
if we're talking about the inclusion of legacy characters, multiple things I think, just by happenstance, Scream 5 has also done, and it just came out like a month ago, so.
fair
Oh,
enough.
okay.
I'll have to watch it when it's on
Yeah,
streaming or
I'm waiting
something.
for
It
VOD.
comes out, I believe, like the first week of March.
Oh.
Yes.
I'm sorry then. I hope you maybe didn't catch a potential spoiler. I
Yeah.
included earlier.
Someone posted the ending like 3 days ago, so
That
that's
was
probably
not what I was spoiling.
See,
So.
I'm not on horror Twitter, so I don't get all these people trying to spy. I'm on like leftist scumbag Twitter. So
To be fair, I've actually been really good about controlling myself and not tweeting anything about Scream after I saw it, which I think is more than some of you fuckers deserve, by the way. um, because here's what I'll say. I am much more annoyed by people who complain about seeing spoilers on Twitter than I have ever been about getting spoiled for something on Twitter.
yeah.
Like,
I'm
just
of
me,
the. Oh, go
just
ahead.
me, but that is my stance.
No, I'm of the mind of like if I don't really care about spoilers. It's more about the respect thing. Like, yeah, if a movie's good, even if it's been spoiled, I'll still enjoy it. I've never like been like, well, that was good, but it was spoiled, so I hated it. So I don't really care. It's more like, yeah, the people who like if you're gonna post the entire ending with video, so I know who the killer is now. That's just kind of a dick move. Even if everyone's seen it, like it's only been out for a month. It's like calm down
Yeah,
a little bit.
I think, in this case, I definitely was like, well, I'll wait till it goes on streaming at least
Right.
because I know there's a lot of people who really wanted to see it. But I still think spoiler culture is dumb.
Yeah, especially now, and especially what people consider spoilers, where they're like, "Oh, this character showed up in a cameo." It's like that's not even a spoiler because it's not. It doesn't affect the main plot.
Right. I mean, there's like, not to get totally off track, but when that new trailer for the new Doctor Strange movie came out, and you hear Charles Xavier as played by Patrick Stewart in the trailer for a minute, I definitely saw some people saying, you guys shouldn't talk about this, you save it for the movie. And it's like, I don't know, guys, they put it in the trailer. Like,
Yeah, like
yeah,
clearly that's what they want us to talk about. That's the weirdest thing to me is when people like get mad about stuff that's in the marketing. It's like, I mean, that's literally the purpose of marketing.
right, like at
yeah.
some point,
If it's in trailers, it's fair game. Yeah, for
It's to
sure.
start the discourse
oh, yeah.
to get
Listen,
ahead of it.
we've had so much peace this year in regards to having no Marvel movies come out yet, discourse wise. So maybe they just need to push off that movie indefinitely.
Maybe we don't need any more. Yeah. Well, yeah.
Although I don't know, because the Texas Chainsaw Massacre discourse was pretty bad. So I guess when Marvel isn't around, we all turn our attention to other things. So maybe we do need Marvel to come
Oh man,
back.
I mean, licorice pizza discourse was also unbearable. So it doesn't any movie's gonna get it, you know.
Any movie at all. It is funny, like the discourse around Texas Chainsaw, where it's like, oh, I don't even give a shit what critics think, and it's like, well, it's just an opinion, man. You don't have to get this mad about.
Right. I should have clarified. So, for people who maybe haven't been following, the discourse has less to do with the content of the movie. It is entirely about people's reactions to the
Hmm.
movie. So, like, the two sides are I liked it, I didn't like it, right?
Right.
And each side seems to be more mad at the other side. Like,
Yeah.
and also, I don't appreciate Halloween Kills being dragged into this mess. I mean,
Yeah.
feel it, your wrong feelings about that movie as much as you do random person who I'm assuming dislikes it who's listening, or feel your correct feelings as much as you do person who I assume likes it who's listening. Um, but like, you do not need to drag in Michael Myers to defend your shitty opinion about this movie and about how Texas Chainsaw Massacre either proves what a real bad horror movie looks like, or like, I can't believe some of you were praising Halloween Kills and now we got this. Like,
Which doesn't even make sense if they know how movies work.
yeah, what does this movie have to do with Halloween Kills other than being a quote unquote legacy sequel? Like,
Yeah. Which it has more to do with. It has more to do in common with Halloween from 2018 than with Halloween Kills.
I guess, in terms of brutality, sure, with Halloween Kills, but
Yeah.
they don't really have a lot of story overlap or even thematic overlap. So, just and also Scream. People keep bringing up Scream too. Um, like I've seen a ton of people say, Texas Chainsaw Massacre was so much better than Halloween Kills and Scream. Like this is the real and it's like, ugh, like we don't need to drag every other movie that's ever been made into this discourse.
Yeah.
Also,
Yeah.
people have been getting nasty about it too, which is like, I
Well,
don't know
and
if we
you
need
know,
this.
discourse is bad when I've seen multiple takes of people being like, "Guys, I haven't seen it yet, but here's what I think." It's like it's on Netflix. Just watch it. Like
Right.
you don't have to tweet out what you
This
think
is
you're gonna feel about it.
actually the most accessible movie
Right.
that there's been discourse about recently. So like, just watch it. Like
Yeah.
watch it on your phone at work. Like
And you know what? And that's the funny thing. Okay, because I saw the trailer. I think I saw one of them, and I was like,
I think
"Okay, this
there
doesn't
was
sound."
only one trailer.
I think there was like one like last week. Because when I
Oh, okay.
clicked on Netflix, it said trailer one and trailer two, and I was like, "There was a second trailer."
Oh, well, I missed that.
Yeah. And I was like, when I saw the trailer, I was like, this doesn't look great, but they never kind of do, so whatever. And then when I saw the movie, I was surprised. Like I went in kind of like Derek, where the first 10 minutes I was like, man, what the hell is this? What does that have to do with Texas Chainsaw? But as it kept going, I was like, okay, now I'm getting into it. And as the kills got more brutal, I found myself more engaged. And so like my initial thoughts were not my ending thoughts. And so like maybe try to go in with an open mind and see if you actually like it or what's going to happen.
Can we
That's
can we
what I
talk
hate
about
about the
the
disc.
hilarious ending too? By the way,
What happens at the end? What are you talking about?
of this movie, where it's literally
Oh,
um,
the yes,
a
yeah. Let's.
car auto driving away.
Oh my god! But before we get into that, okay. So at the beginning, you find out that they're in a Tesla, and then that's how they leave at the end. Like they're getting away. They get into a Tesla, and the Tesla's on autopilot. How great would it have been if that car just exploded? And like Leatherface is coming to kill him, and then it's like, oh my god, don't drive one of those there. But
that would have
yeah,
been
so they're
good. That
like,
would have been true to life.
that would have been
He was
great.
actually just trying to save Melody.
Yeah.
He's like, get
Elon
out!
Musk.
He's like, you're gonna die either way.
Those things
So
are
yeah, so they're
death
leaving,
traps.
and they have that like scene where Lila's like, oh, because Lila has picked up the gun. She saved Melody, her sister, and she's kind of like Leatherface is down for
Melanie
the count.
actually is the one who you think bested Leatherface, which I thought was
Yeah,
like, oh, it's kind of funny to do that. The
and
most
so they're
unlikable one
leaving,
defeats him. Yeah.
and like Lila's like, "Hey, I don't remember what she says, but she says some like callback to the beginning."
Oh, she said, "I actually really would like to move here now with you."
Oh yeah, and then and then Leatherface grabs Melody, pulls her out of the car, and cuts off her head.
Yeah,
And
and then Lila jumps up through the sunroof and is like trying to be like, wait, as the Tesla auto drives her away from the
Yeah, and
town.
Leatherface like holding up her head like Sub-Zero. It like you know what? Here's the thing: is that how many movies, how many Texas Chainsaw haven't ended with that kind of brutality since the first one? So I appreciated that it was like fuck it, this is Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and we're going for it.
well, okay, hold on. Let's just think about that for a second. So, Texas Chainsaw 2 ends with Chop Top being chainsawed and thrown down that chute. Um, and then Stretch doing the Leatherface dance on
Which
top of that
seems
tower.
fun still to this day. I would love to die and then go down a chute.
Texas Chainsaw 4 ends with Matthew McConaughey being shredded by a plane and then Leatherface doing the Home Alone face.
I still
And
don't
then
understand why you rated that movie so low.
I didn't rate it low. I did not rate it badly. I just ranked it low. And then Texas Chainsaw, the beginning, ends with Jordana Brewster being chainsawed through
Yeah.
the back seat. And then Leatherface ends with the final girl getting decapitated. So actually, about half of them have ended with this final act of brutality.
But see, I don't count 2 or 4 because when it happens to the bad guys, that's a little bit more common than when it happens to the good guys. So I'm just gonna count
Sure.
one.
This is the first time it wasn't a prequel though.
Yeah, that's true.
So like that's interesting.
Yeah, and I think that kind of sets it apart in that like
Although I definitely also was like, we can't have two survivors in a Texas Chainsaw
Yeah,
movie.
I felt it was inevitable. Yeah, that
The only time
someone.
it happened was in the worst one.
and again, when he cuts off her head, it is like butter. Like that chainsaw is so
It goes
sharp.
so quick. And also, I don't know, it's kind of funny because you see her body react to the chainsaw before it hits it, which I thought was just funny.
Yeah,
Like she does the shaking.
some of the editing with the gore is a bit off in this movie, I will say.
She shakes before the chainsaw hits her, and then when the chainsaw hits her, she's still.
There is also, it's not actually a kill, but there is an amazing moment, like in the middle of the movie, where Melody is trying to escape from the house, and she's on the staircase, and Leatherface just like ninja throws a hammer at her, knocking her like so like
Which I like too.
yeah, it even makes like a like type sound, and I was like, yes.
Well, and you know I like that scene because it felt very Leatherface. Where like Leatherface, like if he has to kill 2 of you, he's gonna try to incapacitate one of you as quickly as possible, because you guys are cattle to him. So it's not like he really like again with the Sally thing, it makes sense. Like he's not here to like show you like to taunt you like Jason. I mean, he might, but if he has to like get rid of you quickly, that's what he's gonna do. Like he's gonna pull you
Yeah,
into
it's like,
the
how do
back
I
of the
stop this
door.
livestock from running away? Like,
Exactly, and I like
yeah,
that. I like that about him.
yeah,
And
no,
you know,
that was a great
And
moment.
actually, it's funny that you bring that up, Andrew, because in the comic series Jason versus Leatherface, they actually bring up that exact comparison. Like the family cannot understand why Jason kills people so quickly.
right?
Um, like he stalks them, sure, and he'll teleport around them all day, but the actual deaths happen pretty quickly. Like I think it's like it's the Hitchhiker, I think, or maybe it was Drayton. I don't remember. It's been a while since I read it, but it's like I have to hear him scream.
Right, right.
Like
Yeah,
the family wastes no time in capturing, but they'll take all the time in the world for kill.
right, right. Well, and like that's the kind of thing that I also liked about the original, where like uh, the hippie or the hitcher, he clearly liked to mess with you as much as possible. and I do love that they have that different approach, and I like that they brought this back for Leatherface. You know, because it's Mark Berman who plays Leatherface. I think he did a great job as like capturing the statue and the fucking the kind of way that the quickness, which we haven't seen in quite a
Like kind of
while.
like lumbering, but still like efficient. Yeah.
Yeah, like when he comes running at you with that chainsaw, it's like, yeah, I'd be pretty freaked out too, and probably it would be hard for me to get a shot off with this giant 6 foot tall man like just running at me with a chainsaw.
Leatherface is the total I don't even know what word I was looking for, but like, you see him and you think he's going to be this, slow, dumb, big guy, but then he starts running and you're like, "Oh fuck."
Right, right,
Like,
yeah,
I thought I was dealing with
It's the you may not like it, but this is what the ideal male body looks like. Meme.
exactly.
It's just Leatherface.
I was like, "Oh, damn it. I thought I was dealing with OG Jason. I'm dealing with remake Jason?" Fuck.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that that was great, and I like that they brought him back. But and so we're going pretty long. But before we go, I did want to bring up. So to me, I one of the things I liked about this the most is that when we were talking about all of them, and we especially in 1, 2, and 4, they have an underlying theme of like this is kind of how America views violence. And in the original, like you get it from the radio, it's constantly playing, it's constantly talking about the atrocities in Vietnam. And the kids are kind of like, they're like, oh, it's far away. And so when it gets close, it changes their perspective. And I think this one, it is at least trying to say something about the way we view violence because Lila is a survivor of like the high school shooting, and it's kind of saying like now the way people view violence in America is we're just going from one atrocity to another. And to me, I think that that's a very smart thing to try to approach, especially in a horror film, especially in one that's on Netflix and it's 76 minutes. And so I commend them for trying. I don't think they actually get it, but just I think that like just even trying that idea was a good like hey, good job, guys.
Right. And that's why this movie ended up in my fifth place as opposed to my third place spot. Um, I think the bottom four of the franchise for me are all, certainly, well, mostly watchable. And two of them I even actually quite enjoy. But they are the dumb ones.
Right.
Yeah.
And the ones I hold in the top half are generally, I think, ones that, for better or worse, I think have clever ideas and at least deliver on them. This one is the exact middle because I don't know which camp to put it in.
Right.
Because it has clever ideas, I really do believe that. But I don't know that it executes them as well as the other movies did.
See, and that's
Yeah.
almost, yeah. I do agree with that because I was like, oh, this is an interesting idea. Like kind of like we were talking about, like with Sally, the way she dies isn't like rejecting like the idea of like legacy horror characters. Is that intentional? And it's like I don't know what clever ideas are like fully intentional, and ones are just like, oh, that's smart if they did that on purpose.
Yeah, because I think
Well,
like even
yeah.
with my theme of like you go from one atrocity to the other, if you watch this movie, I think what they're trying to lead you to is like you have to fight back, and it's like I don't know if I believe that.
Yeah, and
I mean, I believe it in
see
this specific
that's
case.
real dicey with a school shooting survivor because it's like, should she have fought back? No. It's just
Well,
like,
Yeah,
actually, every time you see a character fight back and not run, they die.
right.
yeah,
So, and so having, we didn't even talk about the school shooting aspect of it.
yeah. I
Having
mean,
this,
that's difficult ground to
that's
cover.
above our pay grade.
Yeah.
But interestingly enough, having the school shooting survivor be the most level-headed character, and not necessarily by her choice, but being the one who runs at the end because she sees what fighting back does
Right.
is interesting, even if they only stumbled onto that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And for what it's worth, I think the rejecting legacy character thing, I don't know that it could have been planned because like this movie was made before both Halloween Kills and Scream came out. And I know Halloween 2018 had come out, but I don't know that the idea of a legacy character
Right.
was as big a part of our lexicon until, again, the 1-2 punch of Halloween Kills and Scream. Like,
Well, you could also looking at Star Wars and shit. Like it's like beyond horror. It's like there's
yeah, sure.
that idea is in like the public. I mean,
It's funny that neither of you have seen Scream because this exact conversation is
oh really? No, fair enough.
down to referencing Star Wars.
Maybe next time, Andrew, next time you see David Blue Garcia at a different festival, just ask him and see what he says.
I'd be like,
I
hey,
mean,
did you steal from Scream, you hat?
if this movie was shot in 2020, then this movie would have been done before Scream entered production.
And not only that, but it was also like, who knows how much the two brothers brought in and how much David Blue Garcia
Yeah,
like
is this
took
like
over
a solo
script-wise.
thing where they edited everything,
Yeah.
or was
I
it
will
just
say
like
that it was very well directed. Like a lot of the shots were really good. The scene where he's like in the tunnel was
Oh,
very
yeah, I agree. I really liked how this movie looked.
yeah. I
I
liked
did
how
like the
gory it
cornfield, and it
was.
was cool. Yeah.
Yeah, even the cornfield, which has become a meme, but it's still like effective. Like I was
Which
generally like,
It's not a cornfield, it is a sunflower field.
oh right. Well,
I don't
everything's a
know, for some reason, that makes it feel more insane.
yeah, that is true. I do like the idea that they're just making sunflowers now. But yeah, I think like a lot of the shots looked really good. I think it was well done. I think there is like how much of this is intentional and how much is this you guys just happened to do this because you wanted to kill some millennials is still
I'm,
up in the air.
I also know that the original directors left, as many directors do, due to creative differences with the studio.
Right. Which at the time was legendary, I think. And then
Yeah.
it switched to Netflix.
Yeah, because the legendary logo's still at the beginning of this movie.
Mhm. And I remember that was like a big deal when it was like, oh man, Legendary is taking care of this.
Right, because all the ingredients were there.
It's
Right.
so weird to me, like the
So-
idea of having studio notes for a Texas Chainsaw movie. You know what I mean? Like it's like
Also,
no,
I'm just
it's,
thinking,
it's supposed to be insane. You know?
every time that we hear about a story like this, the product ends up being a mess.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, and I think this movie is very messy. Like, as we've said, it's uneven. It happens to be an uneven movie that I find very enjoyable.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, no, it's entertaining, but it's
And I-
it's,
not
it's,
clean
it's ridiculous
whatsoever.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think one of the things that I did like about it is like, yeah, he doesn't, and maybe this is why people don't like it, but I like that he doesn't really ever like commit to one. Like, yeah, in this scene, or one of the main characters is a school shooting survivor, but then also there's a scene where two people kind of dry hump with a chainsaw.
yeah,
You know-
this movie said we're doing everything.
Yeah.
there was two missed opportunities in this movie. One was there
Tesla
wasn't a
Model X.
millennial holding a piece of avocado toast that Leatherface cuts through as he's killing them. That was the first one. And then there wasn't a random Hispanic truck driver at the end who just runs away and is never seen again, which is my favorite part of the first movie too.
I know they should have. That guy should have been another legacy character.
Yeah. Why is it that of all the characters from the first one that get referenced in all these sequels and shit, that guy feels like he needs his due.
Yeah, there's been so many direct sequels to the first movie, and they've never addressed this man. What happened?
And
to
you know,
him?
every time they like show clips from the first one, I'm always like, are they gonna address him this time? And they never have.
Yeah, they cut around him at best. Yeah,
I also like the idea of I don't know if you guys have seen the 2014 Talmud Dreaded Sundown movie, but if you haven't, I recommend it. I really love it. But I like how the beginning of this movie kind of does what that movie does, where it's like the movie became such a sensation that the town monetized it. The movie
Oh,
based on a real tragedy.
no, I haven't seen it. That is interesting. Yeah,
They also do that in Book of Shadows, Blair Witch 2, which I think. Is
Oh,
interesting.
I haven't
Well,
seen that, so that's
yeah.
that's
Can
something
I
else.
ask you? I don't know if this is just my algorithm, but Netflix like buried this movie. Like it wasn't on the front page at all. And then when I searched for Texas, it pulled up the Jessica Biel one first.
It pulled up 3 other Texas Chainsaw movies before this
It's
one.
like, you guys know that this is your new movie, right? It's like, do you want me to
Jolie
watch
Richardson, who's been on this podcast before, also said the same thing, that she had to like really search for it before she found
it?
it.
Yeah, it's
I
weird.
already had it
And
on
I
my
was like,
list,
maybe
so it
because I
was.
never watch horror movies on Netflix, it just wasn't there. But you guys are having the same problem. Sounds like,
Well, that's a problem with Netflix in general.
yeah.
Oh, can I also shout out one other thing that I actually think is really funny?
Yeah.
It's the scene when we get the phone POV
Oh yeah.
from the Instagram lives.
Oh yeah.
And I liked it when one of the people who who's commenting on the live is the director.
I didn't notice.
I
That's
didn't
funny.
notice that.
I only noticed that because someone pointed it out on Twitter, but it made me very happy.
What does he say? What is his comment?
Oh, God, let me see if I can find it in this thread. I think his comment was something about, like, I think he calls Leatherface a clown.
Oh. I did notice that there was one comment that was like, I've seen better pranks on TV or some shit. I thought that was funny because you
Yeah.
know that
The
comment.
ones that I'm looking at right now is how much money you pay this guy. You blew me off for this shit. And I've been to more intense haunted houses before, 4 out of 10.
That's the one. Yeah, I like that one.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, I think that too. And then like the fact that you could see, like if he actually did it real, where like you see the phone and it's just kind of shaking back and forth because the guy's being chainsawed.
You know, it did take me a second to get pulled into that scene, but then I remembered it started with that guy being like, "Try anything and you're canceled, bro," and I was like, "Oh, okay, of course, that's the movie I'm watching. What else would I
Right.
like?"
Yeah, like that's where we are at.
Carry on. Sorry for questioning you.
And I think, yeah, I'm glad that we had this conversation, especially with the discourse that's been as where it is right now. It's like, especially on film Twitter and horror Twitter.
It's like when you discuss it, it's like this is the movie that you guys were losing your minds about yesterday.
Yeah, or it's even like, hey guys, you're never gonna find a movie. I mean, you might, but it's very hard to find a movie that's all great and all terrible. Movies are like they're like people; they have multitudes of
Yeah.
things.
I can't think of one. You know, even one of my least favorite movies to have ever been made, you know, Freddy's Dead, has some nice things I can say about it.
It's like a crazy.
And if you want to hear those nice things, you can listen to my podcast episode about it. I don't need to repeat myself here.
Or just listen to our podcast episode about it where it's all nice things, because that's a great movie.
A million nice things. But yeah, I mean, yeah, and I think that's the thing is like, you guys, and I'm talking to Twitter at this point, but like, don't go into a movie wanting to hate it or even wanting to love it. Like, accept it for what it is, and then you won't be fighting on Twitter about woke storylines.
Oh, the amount of people who were like applying the term wokeism to this movie,
Yeah,
it was like they'd never seen a Texas Chainsaw movie before.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
the politics of these movies are always going to be a little murky, and you either need to get on board or watch something else.
Yeah.
Right. Or and it's even like the politics they should always be contemporary, at least in my opinion, in Texas movies. And so to me that was like, yeah, I'm glad that they've kind of brought that back and they're showing these people what their ideals would be before they get chainsawed to prove that sometimes that shit doesn't matter. Sometimes that shit doesn't matter. And also, I will say before we leave, kudos on this movie for having a different way of like doing the Leatherface take someone else's face off without her like slamming him on the slab, and then you just kind of like you see the delicateness of Leatherface this time, and I liked it.
He sees himself as an artist, so I appreciate that.
He's like me. We're both artists, and we both create messes. But yeah, I think overall my takeaways are I like the setting. I liked what they did with Leatherface, and overall I think even though it has a bunch of murkiness. It's only 74 minutes, so just
And
watch
you could watch this twice in the time it would take you to slog through the Eternal. So just check it out.
it.
You know.
Yeah. Derek, any last thoughts on Texas Chainsaw 2022?
Just that, I seem to always fall on the side of enjoying these super divisive, new entries in horror. And I don't know if it's because I am in my prime horror consuming age right now. I mean, I only started watching slashers in high school. So, like, the last 8 years or so. And I don't have that kind of childhood nostalgia for the simple, gory scares that some people do. And so the things I'm attracted to in these movies are different than other people. So always take my opinions, with that in mind. And that said, I really liked this movie. It was dumb fun, but trying hard enough to be clever that I appreciated it. And I still haven't gotten what I really wanted from this series. I want a really grim, but still smart and clever and brief movie that feels like a genuine contemporary, if not equal, just worthy successor to the original. I think that, we've come close a couple times. I don't think we're there. I still think the best version of a 21st century Texas Chainsaw movie can be made. And I'm excited to see it. If this movie gets enough numbers on Netflix, hopefully it will. And hopefully Andrew gets to direct from a script I write. That's my thoughts.
And just make sure put in the truck driver. You have to.
Yeah, he's a star.
He will be the legacy character will be his children.
Well, what it'll
He'll
do
be
is
there too. He'll be there too.
You could do an all Hispanic cast with that. So
he's like, they're like,
it
hey, have you been hunting Leatherface? And he's like, I'll show you what to do when Leatherface comes. And then it just shows him like leaving. He's the smartest.
It's so smart. That's like the smartest possible move.
I just love that he's always leaving from Leatherface, and Leatherface never cares. Josh, any final thoughts?
No, I'm good. I think I said it all. Check it out. Every movie should be under 90 minutes. I'm sick of 2.5-hour films.
Yeah, so. I'm always gonna go. You'll automatically get 2 points in my book if you're under 90 minutes.
Batman being 3 hours, that's gonna be the most begrudging watch of all time.
I know, and I love
Batman. I'm gonna love
and I love Batman, but trim it down.
Sorry. I just love long movies. So. But my Texas Chainsaw movies need to be 75 to 85 minutes long.
Right, exactly. Well, there you go, guys. Our podcast is almost as long as the movie. So in this time, you could have seen it already. Thank you guys for all stopping by, and we'll see you guys when we're back to our normal schedule next week on the podcast. Thanks for stopping by.